Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the operational report for the Russian military, or the Russian offensive, or Russian actions within Ukraine. And talking about actions, there's a lot of actions backwards by the Russians. So moving into the most pressing place in Ukraine, in the front lines, is actually this developing situation where the Russian military, not the Wagner forces, the Russian military, abandoning their positions that were previously held along Bodanivka. So along Bodanivka all the way to the Kromove roads to the north of Kromove. Previously, this was the line, and this was the line that the Wagner forces hand over to the Russian military. And the Russian military very soon probably placed too few troops in this area. The Ukrainian forces attacked this area here, and the Russian military immediately fell back. And as they fell backwards, of course, the Ukrainian forces were on the offensive, so they pressed on their advantage and bombarded them, I guess. And the Russian commands decided that, okay, this is not defendable, and rightly so, because the defense line was not supposed to be there. The defense line was supposed to be just next to Bodanivka, all the way to the main road. So they decided that, okay, we need to fall back to the new line of defense. And from this line of defense, is probably not even defense, they did a mass withdrawal to this new line along a water body of river of salt, together with some lakes and reservoirs, ponds and whatnot, forming a new defense line. And this is actually even shown on the footage posted by Deep State UA, pro-Ukrainian source, showing that the Russian forces sent trucks and vehicles to quickly evacuate their troops, their soldiers, from the forest line and out. And while they were evacuating, because the footage actually come from a Ukrainian drone, so artillery was quickly caught upon their position, and they were being shelled while they are trying to escape. The pro-Russians say that there is no casualties. I would say that maybe one of at least a few might be injured, I guess. And in that footage, not even all troops are evacuated. There are some troops running into a forest line, probably waiting for the second convoy of taxi to come and pick them up. So while they are calling all the Uber to come and capture to save them, this order is also announced by the Russian Defense Ministry. And then the new line of defense is actually posted and shared by Ryba, the pro-Russian source. So if you go to the Bakhmut reservoir, this is they were going to do the new line of defense around here. This is where the new line, or maybe here, it could be in front of the water body. That is also possible. And from this water line, they will follow through. As you can see, there's another water body here. There's another water body here. So they can build up defense around here, and the Russian forces can build up defense around here. So there's some choke points that the Russian forces can make use to defend against any Ukrainian offensive. Ukrainian offensive towards the Russian lines. So it's easier because the Ukrainian forces will have to filter into these areas here. So more easier to defend. And if you move further down, this water line ends in a kind of a forest area here, which is the Russians will actually definitely hold this line and then continue from this forest line at the south, which is just north of Kromove, which is just here. This is Kromove. So that is the new line of defense the Russians are going to hold, and only a few spots that the Ukrainians can actually penetrate through, which is why they decided to move to these positions. This is in fact maneuver warfare, which is kind of funny because it is maneuver warfare. That's what you do in maneuver warfare. You move to better positions in order to defeat your enemies in a better position through moving. And so just that this moving is, they can only move backward, they cannot move forward, because the forward, the Ukrainians use a totally different strategy. They decided to defend every single inch of land, and that is actually a very expensive way of defending, but the Ukrainians can afford it. The Russians cannot afford it. So the Russians cannot defend the line how the Wagner forces have defended their lines. So the Wagner forces is willing to sacrifice troops to hold a line. The Russian forces don't. So the Russian military decided to withdraw away so that they can move. They can preserve their troops as much as possible, and then they can do a counterattack someday after they soften, shell all the Ukrainian forces to a point where they feel that the Ukrainian forces is soft enough for them to do a counteroffensive. Then the Russians will be back. That's how the Russian military operates. It's not wrong. That is like a Soviet way of fighting. It's not wrong. Wagner fights differently. Wagner do not give up territory if they can, and so they're willing to sacrifice soldiers to hold a line, and the Ukrainian forces also willing to do exactly the same. So this just to explain why there is this withdrawal. Because the line of defense was broken. The Russian lines of defense that was from this reservoir north of Botanivka is already established all the way to this area. These are established line of defense. Once the Ukrainians actually broke through, once you broke through it, then there is nothing behind it. So even all these lines are actually not as dug in as it is supposed to be. Maybe not enough troops to actually hold the line. There's no second line of troops. Maybe the Russian military is not putting enough forces in this area here, so they have to do a withdrawal to a position where the number of troops that they have actually can deal with the Ukrainian offensive, which is actually quite severe. Based on information coming from Ryba, up to 3 battalions were involved in this mass offensive from the Ukrainian side. So this is actually not a small force, and as of noon, the previous day, they say that the situation was under control, but they do still acknowledge that they have to withdraw to a better defensive position. They claim that there's up to 26 attacks across the wave contact line across 95 kilometers, and involving up to 1,000 Ukrainian troops with up to 40 tanks and other military and special vehicles. So they say the Ukrainian attack were repelled, but they actually fall back. So yeah, a bit of cope, I think. Yeah. So anyway, the attack, the Ukrainian offensive is also very serious, because they did also send in the air force as a Sukhoi 27 was shot down over Chasivya. So the Russians, I think that this fallback, is not wrong. I think it's not a bad decision. If you're considering that if you want to preserve troops, I think this is actually the right move for the Russian military. Of course, the Wagner forces operates in a totally different doctrine. Is pissed off. It's very pissed off, and then the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reports very weird information. They say that the Russians are attacking Orikovo, Vasilivka, Rykorivka, and Suposhki, which doesn't make sense because it doesn't flow with the tide of war. If the Ukrainians are attacking in this direction, and they were attacking here, and then they were holding the line here, why would the Russians attack in these directions while they are withdrawing from here, and then attacking here? It doesn't make a lot of logical sense. So I don't think that's what is happening, despite is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. But yeah, so there's a situation at Bakhmut. The Russian forces only continue their offensive mainly at Marinka. This is definitely is happening. Marinka is the one that there's nothing much to talk about in Marinka. Pro-Ukrainian source Myro Shinikov reported that the Russians attacked at Pervomaisky. So that's that. Previously, we have reports of the Russians attacking Avdiivka from the east and from the southeast and southwest. Also, no, not a lot to talk about. Avdiivka, like I said, the offensive at Avdiivka is half-hearted, so it's hard to say, hard to really quantify it. And then the Russians are shelling Vodian and Voleda. They're still shelling Vodian and Voleda. So definitely they are preparing for some kind of offensive action from the Ukrainians in this area. So the Russians are definitely trying to hold the line in this area as much as they can. The Ukrainian offensive, as you can see from the Bakhmut, can be very effective. So I'm quite sure the Russian forces are quite nervy right now. Otherwise, I think there's only bombardments. No, the only offensive action is reported at Pervomaisky at the Avdiivka region, at the Marinka, and within the Serbiansky forestry. Previously, there was reports of the Russians are attacking, which I don't think is the case. I don't think that is correct. The Ukrainians are again being reported by the Russian Defense Ministry to be doing some recon or recon by combat. So I don't think the Russians are attacking. They are still shelling. They are shelling Torske, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, and the other two positions are at Vorozhny. Vorozhny is a bit weird because Vorozhny is under Russian control, so I believe it's actually across the river because they say that it's in the area of Vorozhny, and which means that there might be some Ukrainian forces that was trying to cross over, so or at least they are positioned there, suspiciously, and they got shot. And the other one that was shot is actually over at the Selivsky region. So the Russian offensive effectively has ended with this Ukrainian counter-offensive or offensive action over at the Bakhmut front, because Marinka is not really as part of this Russian winter offensive. Neither is this Pervomaisky push, because these two are ongoing skirmishes. Positional warfare that has been going on for months and months and months. Is totally not part of the winter offensive, and the winter offensive effectively has entirely ended. Even with the Wagner forces, they are still attacking over at the northwestern part of Bakhmut, and they are holding the line along the very few areas of Bakhmut city. This is no longer part of. It's no longer an offensive, if you ask me. Is with these Ukrainian attacks that gain so much grounds for the Ukrainians. I think the official winter offensive that transits into a spring offensive has ended for the Russians. So moving forward, I think we might not see Russian offensive anytime soon, as they're still consolidating or preparing their lines against the Ukrainian offensive. And moving forward, when I do the operational report, I don't think that I will be calling these a Russian offensive anymore. It will be just Russian operations. So anyway, this is the operational report for the Russian forces, and I would, as DPA officially declares the end of the Russian offensive that started from the winter offensive all the way to spring. And I'll see you in the next update.